Welcome to the Quabbin Reservoir. The Quabbin Reservoir is the largest inland body of water in Massachusetts. Its nearly 180 miles of shoreline with over 100 islands is not only picturesque, but to over 3 million residents of the Commonwealth, it's vital. This man-made body of water is here for one single purpose: to provide drinking water for Boston, its suburbs, and several communities local to the reservoir.
The Quabbin is like no other place in the state. We have vast protected resources, the land and the water, and beautiful views.
We store about 412 billion gallons of water in the reservoir.
I'm thoroughly impressed with the engineering and the construction of this dam and what they did with the instrumentation they had back in the 20s and 30s.
There's a constant water balancing act taking place. There's rivers and brooks that feed the reservoir, and the reservoir is also feeding the Swift River.
To have miles and miles of undeveloped shoreline, great wildlife habitat, amazing bass, trout, salmon fishery, as good as anywhere in New England, is pretty special.
Quabbin, in my opinion, is the best place in the state of Massachusetts to freshwater fish. So it's a fantastic place.
Some of the common wildlife species that we see here at the Quabbin are moose, black bear, raccoon, fox, coyote, many different bird species.
And as a protected watershed, it's kind of a living laboratory for some natural processes as well.
Watershed forestry is a little different than other forestry in that your primary resource that you're managing for is the water.
How's it look?
Look good, always.
If you come here and you don't know the story, it's this beautiful natural place and there's all kind of wildlife here, but this was created by people. So it is a completely created landscape, and I think that's really neat.
And it's kind of this oasis that's there for the wildlife, but also for the public as well.
And just special, it's just a really amazing place for people to recreate and enjoy.
This is my office, so it's pretty great.
But what you see today began over 100 years ago. In the mid-19th century, Boston started to realize that it would soon be facing a water shortage unless action was taken. Plans were made, aqueducts were built connecting outlying lakes, and reservoirs were constructed. But it wasn't long until the need outgrew the resources, and solutions to the problem had to come from further west. Eventually, the Swift River Valley, 65 miles from Boston, was presented as the solution. Being 530 feet higher in elevation than the Boston city base, water could easily be gravity-fed instead of having to be pumped to the city. On paper, it looked like the perfect solution, but there were 4 big problems: Prescott, Dana, Greenwich, and Enfield, 4 towns that lie in the heart of the Swift River Valley. There were homes, schools, businesses, churches, cemeteries, railroads, and everything that communities need to support their way of life. But now they were ground zero for a project that would provide an ever-expanding Boston metro population with sufficient drinking water. Needless to say, there was opposition, enough to delay the project by several years. But over the course of 11 years, from 1927 to 1938, the 4 towns were slowly dismantled and cleared of all people and structures. Homes and factories were purchased from townspeople, then razed or moved. Even the vegetation was cut down, burned, or bulldozed. Over 7,600 bodies from 34 cemeteries were exhumed and reinterred, most going to the newly created Quabbin Park Cemetery. At midnight on April 27, 1938, as people at the farewell ball listened, the Enfield town bell tolled, and Dana, Enfield, Prescott, and Greenwich officially ceased to exist. Soon, all that remained was a huge sandy basin measuring 18 miles long by 6 miles wide. Flooding of the valley started a year later, In total, some 2,500 residents no longer have a place to call home. Today, all we see is the surface of the water, but the memory of those 4 towns is kept alive through the Quabbin's educational programs.
I told you as we took this walk we were going to look for signs of things that were here before. I pointed out the maple trees, but if you look around now, is there anything you think was here before? Our job is to take everything that everybody does and explain it to the public to help them understand what we do to protect the watershed and the water. So if we were here 100 years ago and we wanted to head into Enfield Village, we would have gone to the left through those 2 hills there. Remember, those would have been hills, and we would have walked down the road, and that would have brought us into Enfield Village.
During this time, from 1935 to 1939, the Windsor Dam and Goodnoe Dike were under construction. After both the Windsor Dam and the Goodnoe Dike were completed, the waters of the Swift River began filling the valley. 7 years later, in June 1946, the reservoir reached capacity for the first time, and transformation from valley to reservoir was complete. When finished, the Windsor rose 295 feet high, 2,640 feet long, and was the largest earth-filled dam east of the Mississippi. Every aspect of this water supply system was considered an engineering marvel. Now its job would be to hold back 412 billion gallons of water. Today, the Quabbin Reservoir and the Ware River watershed are carefully managed by the Massachusetts Department of Conservation and Recreation's Division of Water Supply Protection. They are responsible for the protection of the reservoir quality and management of the surrounding watershed lands. Every aspect is carefully monitored by experts in numerous fields.
We have environmental quality, we have foresters, we have wildlife biologists, we have the administration, we have the interpretive services, and civil engineers.
These behind-the-scenes people help to ensure clean drinking water for 3 million Massachusetts residents, most of whom are in the Boston area.
We're all working together to protect and manage the water supply.
Water is without a doubt one of the highest priorities. To ensure this, the Quabbin's environmental quality staff regularly check the water for anything out of the ordinary. Water sampling and field inspections help identify possible problems.
We're looking at the entire water column, and we're looking for different types of algae, especially those that cause taste and odor problems in water. So we're just looking to see what we have and actually take the samples back to the lab, look at them with the microscope, identify what we have, and then I report that.
An important feature of the Quabbin is how the water is filtered or cleaned. During the construction of the reservoir, 80,000 acres of land adjacent to the Swift River were taken to create a natural filtration system. This is known as watershed protection, and managing the forest that surrounds the water does exactly that.
At Quabbin, we have about 60,000 acres of forest. There is 75% of it that we want to actively manage. We want more diversity of age structure, more diversity in species. So we're going to cut of that 75% about 1% a year. And it seems to make a lot of sense to us to take that 1% out of trees that are unhealthy or already dead.
Field teams also work to control prolific harmful plant species, especially bittersweet.
We're burning the bittersweet as part of a new step in our land management plan here at Quabbin to control the invasives. We're doing it to protect the integrity of the dam and the dike.
Looking out over the reservoir, one may notice a lack of boats. This is intentional as access and fishing are limited. Boating is strictly monitored and is permitted only in certain areas.
And it's possible because we manage through the SEAL program, and we restrict motors to 20 horsepower two-stroke and 25 horsepower four-stroke. So now I'm going to be sealing his boat, we call it, and basically we attach the boat to the trailer. And we have to attach it on the boat and trailer that cannot be removed. And he's good till the next time he comes in. And when he comes in, we will cut that, enter the seal number into the computer, and they go on the water. And then we do this process when they come off the water.
The safety of both the Windsor Dam and the Goodnoe Dike are, of course, top priority, and Quabbin engineers closely monitor every detail.
Today we're going to be using this instrument called a level to monitor elevations of settlement pins that are placed strategically throughout this dam structure.
We're looking for things like how drainage is processed through the dam structure, how it's carried safely down, there's no erosion.
We've done it since 1939 when the settlement pins were installed. It'll tell us how the dam is settling over time.
And the Horseshoe Dam was originally built during the construction of the reservoir, and it serves as a settling pond for the flow as it comes into the reservoir. We do have an intermediate spillway which allows some control of flood capacity or flood control operations. When we talk about reservoir elevations, it's important to note that the reservoir normally fluctuates every year, probably on average about 7 feet.
And keeping a watchful eye on everybody in this 80,000-acre reservoir are the Watershed Rangers.
We're protecting the drinking water for over 3 million people. We do this by vehicle, foot patrol, bike patrol. We also have boats, ATVs, and sometimes we're on snowmobiles and snowshoes as well.
We get to teach the public about their role in protecting the watershed, keeping the water clean, keeping the lands clean.
And we also rely on the good working relationships that we have with local and state police, as well as our co-workers and the public who love the place just as much as we do.
It's easy to see that the Quabbin is more than just drinking water for the Commonwealth. Although the drinking water supply is the primary aim of this careful land management, a variety of habitat have been created over the years. As a result, a diverse wildlife community now flourishes in the Quabbin watershed, and it was the site of a highly successful program to reintroduce bald eagles to Massachusetts. And finally, perhaps the biggest impact for visitors is the Quabbin's beauty. No matter what the season, the Quabbin becomes a living art gallery.